The silence between stars. The sky over New Terra bloomed with flowers of nuclear fire as the orbital defense platforms died one by one. Admiral Kenzo Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Intrepid, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display showing the systematic destruction of humanity's most fortified colony. "Status report," he demanded, voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before him. "3 more destroyers lost, sir," his communications officer replied. "The Shroud vessels aren't even bothering to evade our fire. Their hulls just absorb it." For 6 months, the Shroud had carved a path through human space, leaving silent worlds in their wake. Not destroyed. Worse, empty. As if every trace of human presence had been carefully extracted, leaving pristine planets that bore no evidence of ever being touched by human hands. The first contact had been unremarkable. A diplomatic vessel encountered what appeared to be a massive cloud of shifting black particles near the Epsilon Eridani system. The cloud coalesced into a roughly symmetrical shape, established communications, and identified itself as an ambassadorial entity from a collective called the Shroud. Initial exchanges seemed promising. The Shroud expressed curiosity about human expansion and technology. But something had been lost in translation. Perhaps it was when humanity offered to share terraforming technology, not realizing that to the Shroud, reshaping worlds was akin to desecration. Or perhaps it was inevitable. 2 species with fundamentally incompatible views of existence. The diplomatic vessel disappeared 3 days later. And then the silence began spreading from world to world. "Admiral, we've lost the outer defense ring," the tactical officer reported. "The Shroud vessels are approaching the inner perimeter." Chen closed his eyes briefly. 26 million colonists on New Terra's surface. The evacuation had barely begun. "Order all remaining ships to focus fire on the lead vessel," he commanded. "We need to buy more time for the civilian transports." On the display, the 12 remaining Earth Fleet warships adjusted position, concentrating their firepower on the largest Shroud vessel, a massive structure resembling an obsidian nautilus, trailing wispy tendrils of particle matter that seemed to bend light around it. The combined firepower of humanity's most advanced weapons splashed harmlessly against the alien hull. It wasn't that their weapons couldn't penetrate the Shroud's defenses. It was as if the energy was simply being redirected elsewhere, perhaps into another dimension entirely. "Sir," his science officer's voice cracked. "I'm detecting a strange energy buildup from the lead Shroud vessel. Nothing like their previous attack patterns." Before Chen could respond, a wave of absolute darkness rolled outward from the Shroud flagship. It wasn't energy in any conventional sense, more like the absence of it. Where it passed, ships simply winked out of existence. Not destroyed in fire and debris, but erased with terrifying precision. "Full retreat," Chen ordered, knowing it was already too late. "Get word to Earth. Tell them." The darkness enveloped the Intrepid, and Admiral Chen's final words never reached Earth Command. 6 weeks later, in a hidden facility orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa, Captain Alina Reyes stood before the most unusual warship she had ever seen. "You want me to what?" she asked, unable to hide her disbelief as she stared through the observation window at the vessel docked in the cavernous bay below. Admiral Takashi Yamamoto, head of Earth Fleet's Special Projects Division, gestured toward the ship. "Captain the UES Bastion is humanity's last hope against the Shroud." The Bastion didn't look like any other Earth Fleet vessel, where most warships were angular and utilitarian. This one had an almost organic quality, smooth curves and a hull that seemed to ripple subtly even at rest. Its surface was a deep blue-black that reminded Reyes of the ocean depths on Earth. "With all due respect, Admiral, I'm a field commander, not a test pilot. My place is on the front lines with my crew." "There are no front lines anymore, Captain," Yamamoto replied quietly. "The Shroud has taken 14 colony worlds. New Terra fell last month with all hands. The Arcturus defense fleet was wiped out 3 days ago. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach Sol in less than 2 months. Reyes felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had known things were bad, but the military information networks had been increasingly restricted. What makes this ship different? Our most powerful weapons barely register against their hulls. Yamamoto led her toward an elevator. That's because we've been thinking about this the wrong way. We've been trying to punch through their defenses when we should have been trying to speak their language. The elevator descended to the docking bay level. As they approached the bastion, Reyes could see technicians swarming around it, making final adjustments to the hull. 5 years ago, we discovered something on Mars, Yamamoto continued. An artifact buried beneath the Olympus Mons. Not shroud technology, something older. We believe it predates human civilization by at least 1 million years. And you built a ship based on alien tech we barely understand. Reyes couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Integrated, it would be more accurate, Yamamoto corrected. The Bastion's core systems are derived from that artifact. We've spent 5 years understanding just enough to create this prototype. They reached the ship's main airlock. Up close, the hull was even stranger. It didn't reflect light quite right, as if the surface existed partially in another state. The shroud operates by manipulating the fundamental forces of reality, Yamamoto explained. They don't just have shields. They selectively phase matter and energy between dimensions. They don't just have weapons. They create localized bubbles where our physics simply doesn't apply. And this ship can do the same? Reyes asked, running her hand along the hull. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive. Not exactly the same, but similar principles. The Bastion doesn't just defend against attacks, it adapts to them. The more it encounters a specific threat, the better it becomes at countering it. Reyes frowned. You're talking about it like it's sentient. Yamamoto's silence was answer enough. Jesus, Reyes whispered. Is it I? Not artificial intelligence, came a new voice. A tall, thin man with prematurely white hair approached from within the ship. More like integrated intelligence. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, lead designer. The ship isn't sentient on its own, Webb explained, but it forms a symbiotic relationship with its captain. Your neural patterns, your instincts, your experience. The ship amplifies them, creates a feedback loop that allows for reactions and adaptations faster than any traditional command structure could achieve. Reyes looked from Webb to Yamamoto. You want me to mind meld with an experimental ship based on million-year-old alien technology that we barely understand? I want you to save the human race, Captain, Yamamoto said quietly. The Bastion can match the Shroud's capabilities, but only with the right person at its heart. We've run simulations with every command-level officer. Your neural patterns show the highest compatibility with the integration systems. Why me? You think differently, Webb interjected. Most officers follow established tactics, fall back on training. You improvise. Adapt. See patterns others miss. The Bastion needs that. Reyes stared at the ship. Her career had been marked by unconventional decisions, choices that had saved lives but earned her as many reprimands as commendations. The military valued innovation in theory but conformity in practice. If I refuse, then I ask the next person on the list, Yamamoto said, and hope they're good enough. But they won't be you. Reyes took a deep breath. When do we leave? As soon as you're integrated, Webb answered. The process takes about 12 hours. And my crew? The Bastion requires minimal personnel, Webb said. Just you and 5 specialists to maintain the systems you can't directly interface with. I want Lieutenant Commander Isaacs as my XO, Reyes insisted, and Chief Engineer Santos. I trust them with my life. Yamamoto nodded. Granted. Choose your remaining crew within the hour. As Yamamoto departed, Reyes turned to Webb. What aren't you telling me about this integration process, Doctor? Webb hesitated. There's a risk. About 20% of test subjects experienced complications. Define complications. Personality fragmentation. Memory loss. In 2 cases, complete neural shutdown. Webb met her gaze. But those were early trials. We've refined the process. And the success cases: enhanced cognitive processing, reaction times tripled, intuitive understanding of complex systems with no prior training. Webb gestured to the ship. Captain, the Bastion isn't just a weapon. It's an evolution. Those who successfully integrate become something more. Rice looked up at the massive ship, or something less. Despite her misgivings, she knew her answer hadn't changed. The Shroud was coming. Earth was next. And Elena Reyes had never backed down from a fight, even one she might not survive. "Let's get started," she said. The integration chamber resembled a medical pod more than a captain's chair. As Webb's team attached neural interfaces to her temples and spine, Reyes tried to steady her breathing. "The process works best if you don't resist," Webb advised. "Think of it like learning to swim. Fighting the water makes you sink. Working with it keeps you afloat." "Poetic," Reyes muttered. "The Bastion will scan your neural pathways first, creating a map of your mind," Webb continued. "Then it will establish initial connections. You'll feel disoriented as your brain adapts to processing ship data directly. Some subjects report hallucinations during this phase." "Comforting." Webb checked the final connections. "Ready, Captain." Reyes closed her eyes. "Initiate integration." The first sensation was warmth spreading from the connection points throughout her body. Then came the whispers, not voices exactly, but data streams that her brain struggled to interpret as sensory input, colors she had never seen, sounds beyond human hearing range, the taste of radiation. She gasped as her consciousness suddenly expanded outward, stretching beyond the confines of her body. She could feel the ship around her, not as a separate entity, but as an extension of herself. Hull integrity, reactor outputs, sensor data, all processed as naturally as feeling the position of her limbs. "Captain Reyes." Webb's voice seemed distant. "Can you hear me?" She opened her eyes, seeing both the integration chamber and, simultaneously, every corridor and compartment of the ship through internal sensors. "I can hear you," she replied, her voice steady despite the overwhelming influx of information. "And I can feel the ship. It's incredible." Webb's relief was palpable. Neural integration at 89% and stabilizing. "That's well above our projections." The whispers were organizing themselves now, becoming coherent streams of data she could access at will. And beneath it all, she sensed something else, a presence, curious and watchful. "Doctor," she said slowly, "I don't think we're alone in here." Before Webb could respond, the facility's alarms blared. Admiral Yamamoto's voice came over the communication system, tight with urgency. Shroud vessels detected entering the solar system. 3 ships on direct course for Earth. Reyes sat up, neural cables still attached. "Time to intercept." "Less than 6 hours," Yamamoto replied. "The outer defense fleet is moving to engage, but they would fail, just as every other human fleet had failed. Everyone in the room knew it. The Bastion isn't fully tested." Webb protested. "We need at least 48 hours of systems checks before combat deployment." Reyes felt a surge of something from the ship, not quite emotion, but a response to her own rising determination. Readiness. Purpose. "Doctor," she said, "disconnect me from these cables. The testing will have to happen in real time." "Captain." "That's an order." She turned to Yamamoto's image on the screen. "Admiral, have my selected crew report for immediate boarding. The Bastion will launch in 30 minutes. As technicians scrambled to disconnect her from the integration chamber, Reyes felt the presence in her mind grow stronger, more defined. Not a voice, but an impression, a sense of awakening after a long dormancy. "We are Bastion," it seemed to say, "and we are ready." The final cable detached, but the connection remained. The ship was part of her now, and she was part of it. Humanity's last line of defense against an enemy that had never known defeat. "Let's see how the Shroud handles a fair fight," Reyes whispered, rising to her feet with new purpose. In her mind, she could feel the ship's systems coming fully online, preparing for the battle ahead. The hunt had begun. The living shield. The Bastion moved through space like nothing Earth fleet had ever fielded before. Where conventional warships relied on fusion drives and reaction mass, this vessel seemed to bend space around itself, slipping between the stars with uncanny grace. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the bridge, though stood wasn't quite accurate anymore. Her physical body remained in the command chair, neural interfaces connecting her directly to the ship's systems, but her consciousness extended throughout the vessel. She could feel every hull plate, every power conduit, every subtle adjustment in the propulsion field. Approaching Jupiter's orbit, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander David Isaacs, her XO, and one of the few crew members she had personally selected. Shroud vessels have breached Mars' defense perimeter. Earth fleet engaging. Rice didn't need the report. She could sense the distant battle through the Bastion's advanced sensor array. 3 Shroud ships against 28 Earth vessels. It should have been an overwhelming advantage for humanity. It wasn't. "Show me," she said anyway. For the benefit of her crew, the main view screen flickered to life, displaying the battle unfolding near Mars. Earth's most powerful warships unleashed everything in their arsenal. Railgun projectiles, plasma torpedoes, nuclear-tipped missiles. The Shroud vessels, obsidian structures that seemed more grown than built, absorbed or diverted each attack with contemptuous ease. Then the counterattack began. Waves of absolute darkness rolled out from the Shroud ships, erasing human vessels wherever they touched. Not destroying, erasing. No debris, no radiation signature, just empty space where proud ships had been moments before. "They're not killing them," Rice murmured. "They're removing them from our reality." "Captain." Isaacs looked concerned. "The Shroud doesn't destroy," she explained, drawing on knowledge that seemed to bubble up from her connection with the Bastion. "They preserve. They believe they're saving these worlds, these ships, conserving them in a state of perfection, outside the ravages of time and entropy." "How do you know that?" Chief Engineer Santos asked, looking up from her console. Rice didn't have an answer that would make sense. Since the integration, she had access to intuitive leaps of understanding that she couldn't explain. It was as if the Bastion itself was teaching her, sharing accumulated knowledge from civilizations long gone. "Prepare for combat approach," she ordered instead. "All hands to battle stations." The Bastion accelerated, covering the distance to Mars in minutes rather than the hours it would take a conventional ship. As they neared the battle, Rice could feel the ship's defensive systems coming alive, preparing for their first true test against the enemy that had devastated human space. "Captain," Isaacs warned, "Earth fleet is being decimated. 90% losses already." On the screen, only 3 human ships remained, desperately maneuvering to avoid the waves of nothingness emanating from the Shroud vessels. As they watched, another Earth destroyer vanished, leaving only the flagship and a single cruiser. "Open a channel to Admiral Hassan," Rice commanded. Hassan's face appeared on screen, his command center filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. "Identify yourself," he demanded. "Captain Alina Reyes, UES Bastion, Special Projects Division. We're here to assist." Hassan's expression shifted from suspicion to desperate hope as he recognized her. "Reyes? They said you were on a classified mission." But he was cut off as his ship shuddered under another attack. "Whatever you're going to do it fast. We can't hold them much longer." "Pull back your remaining ships," Admiral Rice said. "We'll take it from here." 1 experimental ship against 3 Shroud vessels. Hassan shook his head. "I can't order my people to abandon Earth's defense." "You're not abandoning anything," Rice replied, feeling the Bastion's systems surge in response to her rising determination. "You're giving us room to work." Perhaps something in her voice convinced him. "Very well, Captain. God help us all." The transmission ended. As the last Earth ships retreated toward the safety of Luna's defense grid, the Bastion approached the Shroud fleet alone. Up close, the alien vessels were even more unsettling. their surfaces constantly shifting like liquid obsidian, tendrils of darkness coiling and uncoiling around their hulls. "They're beautiful," Ensign Cato whispered from the sensor station. They were, Rise realized, terrifying but magnificent in their alien perfection. "They detected us," Isaacs reported. "They're altering course to intercept." Rise closed her eyes, deepening her connection with the Bastion. She could feel the ship's weapons charging, not conventional armaments, but systems that operated on the same principles as the Shroud's technology. "Let's introduce ourselves," she said. The Bastion released its first attack, not a projectile or energy beam, but a focused distortion in space-time that rippled toward the nearest Shroud vessel. Where it struck, the alien ship's perfect surface briefly distorted, as if struggling to maintain cohesion. For the first time since they had appeared in human space, a Shroud vessel showed signs of damage. The response was immediate. All three Shroud ships reoriented toward the Bastion, tendrils extending outward like reaching fingers. A wave of darkness, the same attack that had erased the Earth fleet ships, surged toward them. "Brace," Rise called, though the warning was unnecessary. Through her neural link, she had already directed the Bastion's defensive systems. The wave struck and parted around them, like water flowing around a stone. The Bastion shuddered but remained intact, its hull glowing with a blue-green luminescence where the attack had made contact. "It's learning?" Rise whispered, feeling the ship's systems rapidly adapting, analyzing the Shroud's attack pattern and developing countermeasures. "It's learning their language." "Captain," Santos called from engineering. "Whatever just happened, power consumption spiked by 300%. We can't sustain this level of defense for long." Rise nodded. "We don't need to defend indefinitely. We just need to hit back harder." She directed the Bastion to fire again, this time splitting its attack between all three Shroud vessels. The space-time distortions struck with greater precision, targeting what Rise somehow knew were critical nodes in the Shroud ship's structure. The smallest Shroud vessel convulsed, its smooth surface rupturing in several places. Dark matter, or something that resembled it, leaked into space like black blood. "It's working," Isaac said, disbelief evident in his voice. But the victory was short-lived. The two larger Shroud ships moved to flank the Bastion, coordinating their attacks. Waves of increasing intensity battered the experimental vessel from multiple directions. "Hull integrity compromised on decks 4 through 7, reported the damage control officer. "We're losing power to the starboard defensive array." Rise could feel it, not just through reports, but through her connection to the ship. The Bastion was wounded, struggling to adapt quickly enough to the evolving Shroud attacks. And yet, beneath the pain, she sensed something else. Determination. The ship was fighting not just through its technology, but with a will of its own. "Reroute power from propulsion to defensive systems," she ordered. "And prepare for my signal to execute attack pattern Delta." A dangerous gambit. It would bring them perilously close to the largest Shroud vessel, well within the range of its most devastating attacks. But the Bastion's sensors had detected something during their exchanges, a brief vulnerability in the Shroud's defenses during the moment they unleashed their reality-erasing wave. The Bastion surged forward, accelerating directly toward the Shroud flagship. The alien vessel responded as predicted, marshaling its energy for another attack. "Captain," Isaacs warned, "if we're hit with a full discharge at this range." "Exactly," Rise replied, her focus absolute as she guided the Bastion through its approach. "They'll put everything into this attack, and for just a moment, they'll be exposed." The wave built before them, darkness deeper than the space between stars. Rise waited until the last possible instant, feeling the attack gathering, reaching its peak. Now. The Bastion fired, not at the wave itself but through it, aiming for the source. Its weapons tore through the momentary weakness in the Shroud's defenses and struck the core of the alien vessel. The effect was catastrophic for both ships. The Shroud's attack collapsed inward, creating a feedback loop that distorted reality around both vessels. The alien flagship's perfect form shattered, fragments of its hull spinning the way into the void. But the Bastion hadn't escaped unscathed. The backlash from the collapsed attack had overloaded half its systems. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as sections of the ship lost pressure. Multiple hull breaches, shouted the damage control officer. We've lost main power. Life support failing on all decks. Reyes could feel the ship's pain as if it were her own. Systems failing, energy bleeding away. But she could also feel something else. The solution. The Bastion had absorbed data from each exchange with the Shroud, learning, adapting. There was a way to survive, to win, but at a cost. Clear the bridge, she ordered suddenly. All hands to escape pods. Isaac stared at her. Captain. That's an order, Commander. Get everyone off this ship now. We're not leaving you. The Bastion can still win this fight. Reyes cut him off. But not with a crew aboard. What I'm about to do. She paused. The ship needs all its remaining power, including life support. Understanding dawned in Isaac's eyes. There has to be another way. There isn't. Reyes softened her tone. David, humanity gets one shot at this. If we fail here, Earth falls. You know that. After a moment of agonized hesitation, Isaacs nodded. All hands, abandon ship, he called over the comm. Proceed to escape pods immediately. As her crew evacuated, Reyes deepened her neural connection with the Bastion, pushing beyond the safe parameters. Warning indicators flashed across her interface, but she ignored them, reaching for total integration. Captain, Isaac said from the doorway, the last to leave. It's been an honor. The honor was mine, she replied. Now go. Make sure Earth knows what happened here. Make sure they understand what the Shroud really is. When she was alone, Reyes released the final safeguards on her neural interface. Pain lanced through her skull as the ship's consciousness flooded into her mind without restriction. No longer captain and vessel, but a single entity with a shared purpose. We understand now, came the thought, neither fully hers nor the ship's. We know what must be done. The Bastion's damaged systems came back online, drawing power directly from Reyes's neural energy. Her physical body convulsed in the command chair, but her consciousness expanded throughout the ship, becoming the ship. Human ingenuity merged with ancient technology, creating something new, something the Shroud had never encountered. The remaining Shroud vessels converged, preparing to finish what they had started. But the Bastion was changing, its hull reconfiguring, absorbing the damaged sections and growing new ones. The blue-green luminescence that had appeared during the first attack now spread across its entire surface, pulsing like a heartbeat. The Shroud attacked again, waves of nothingness crashing against the Bastion's hull. But instead of resisting, the ship absorbed the energy, channeled it, redirected it. What had been a weakness became a strength. We see you now. Reyes/Bastion communicated directly to the Shroud vessels. We understand your purpose. The Shroud paused in their attack, perhaps surprised by the direct communication on their level. You preserve. You perfect. You remove from the flow of time that which you deem worthy, Reyes/Bastion continued. But in doing so, you deny the very essence of what you claim to protect. A response came, not in words, but in concepts that bloomed directly in Reyes's expanded consciousness. Preservation is salvation. Change is death. We offer eternity. Eternity without change is not life, Reyes/Bastion countered. It is stagnation, death wearing the mask of perfection. The Bastion released its counterattack, not a weapon of destruction, but a wave of its own, carrying the essence of humanity's adaptive nature, the beauty found in impermanence, the strength born from overcoming challenges. Where this wave touched the Shroud vessels, their perfect surfaces began to change, patterns shifting, rigidity giving way to flexibility. Some parts resisted, clinging to their original form, but others transformed, evolving into something new. This is our gift to you, Reyes/Bastion projected. Not perfection, but possibility. The battle above Mars ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The shroud vessels withdrew, their cohesion disrupted, their singular purpose now questioned by new concepts they had never considered. In the aftermath, Earth fleet rescue ships found the Bastion drifting. It all transformed into something even more alien than before. The escape pods were recovered, the crew saved, all except Captain Elena Reyes. Her body was found in the command chair, neural interfaces still connected, no vital signs detectable. And yet, when engineers attempted to shut down the Bastion's systems for retrieval, they discovered something extraordinary. The ship refused to power down. Its core remained active, its sensors alert, its presence somehow watchful. Admiral Yamamoto stood in the observation room of Earth Fleet Headquarters, looking out at the transformed Bastion now docked in the secure facility. "So she's gone?" he asked Dr. Webb, who had been examining the ship since its return. Webb hesitated. "Her body died, yes, but brain scans show patterns still active in the ship's neural network. Patterns that match Captain Rice's consciousness. You're saying she's become the ship?" "I'm saying the line between them has ceased to exist," Webb replied. "What we created was a symbiosis more complete than we ever imagined possible." On the other side of the system, the Shroud fleet had halted its advance toward Earth. Long-range sensors detected the alien vessels in what appeared to be communication with one another, perhaps even conflict, as factions emerged within their previously unified collective. "And the Shroud?" Yamamoto asked. "They're changing," Webb said. "The Bastion didn't just defeat them, it infected them with an idea. The concept that preservation without evolution is just another form of extinction." Aboard the dormant Bastion, lights began to pulse in a pattern reminiscent of a heartbeat. Maintenance crews reported hearing whispers in empty corridors, not words exactly, but impressions of thoughts. And deep within the ship's core, where the neural interface had connected Captain Elena Reyes to the ancient technology, something stirred, neither fully human nor machine, but a guardian born from humanity's desperate final stand. The Shroud had conquered countless civilizations across the galaxy, preserving what they deemed perfect and removing the rest from existence. But they had never encountered humanity before, a species that turned adaptation into an art form, that found strength in change rather than stasis. They had never faced a living fortress with the heart of a human captain. And that made all the difference.